Pues ya estamos de vuelta en Negocios Televisión y mirando los mercados financieros en unas semanas que nos esperan de 2023, que desde luego van a ser apasionantes, donde tenemos un entorno macroeconómico bastante incierto, donde tenemos, por ejemplo, a la economía de Estados Unidos a pleno rendimiento con ese 4,9% de crecimiento. Europa, mientras tanto, está coqueteando incluso con la recesión. Hoy hemos tenido informe de estabilidad financiera en Europa, en la eurozona, Luis de Guindos avisando de que puede haber fragilidad en el sistema financiero europeo, y mientras tanto el mercado, que está relativamente tranquilo, y con los bonos, por ejemplo, que se decía que 2023 iba a ser el año de los bonos, definitivamente no lo ha sido, por lo menos en el conjunto de año hasta ahora, pero quién sabe si 2024 podría serlo. Bueno, pues en los próximos minutos vamos a hablar con Pictet Asset Management. Tenemos el placer de saludar aquí hoy en nuestros estudios en Negocios Televisión a su estratega jefe, a Luca Paolini. Luca, good morning. Thank you so much for being in Negocios Televisión here in Madrid. Luca, first of all, my first question is about the U.S. economy, about the macro. We know that the U.S. economy has been really resilient, and this has been surprising, but what is the explanation of this data of GDP, 4.9%, a really great expansion, economic expansion for the U.S.? What is the explanation?
Well, the economy in the U.S. has been exceptionally strong, I would say. And the main reason is that the consumers there continue to spend. They have money, they have jobs, inflation is falling, but it's not only the consumer. Companies are spending, they're investing, and on the top of that, the government is spending too. So you have the government, companies, and consumer spending, and a lot. And I think the question is more about, can they continue? And I don't think so.
If we look into Europe, for example, today we had the publication of the financial stability report here in Europe. De Guindos, the vice president of the ECB, spoke about fragility. But what about the economic projections for Europe in the next few years? Are they better than those for the US?
I think when you look at the direction of growth, we know that Europe is always growing slower than the US, but I think next year is going to be different, because we see in Europe an increase in real incomes, wages will continue to rise, inflation is falling, and I think consumers will start to feel a little bit better with inflation being on the way down. So I think that next year you're going to see the US decelerating and Europe accelerating, not by much, but it will feel much, much better than currently.
No recession for Europe then?
Well, we probably already are in a recession, but for us the idea is that we are going to get out of recession pretty quickly, and it's not going to be a massive recovery, but it would feel, at least in Europe, probably better than in the US.
We've already spoken about the macro, the situation, macroeconomic situation now, but now, I think we should speak about investing. What should we do now? What should we do now, for example, looking into 2024? I guess, obviously, we should invest in quality companies, but what are the features of quality companies, for example, in your opinion, in Pictet Asset Management's opinion?
Well, first of all, we expect positive returns on equities, bonds, and cash above inflation, which is the first time in quite a long time. When you look at the equity markets especially, well, we have a focus clearly on quality companies because the global economic outlook is still very fragile. We are going to see a lot of geopolitical risks, and interest rates are high. So you want to have companies that are solid balance sheet. And so we have a few sectors that we like. We have pharma, luxury goods, which are actually sectors where the European market is pretty strong. So I think there are some positive news in those sectors.
What about technology? Because yesterday, for example, we had NVIDIA earnings that weren't so good, at least for the reaction of the market. Are you still looking at technology for next year, 2024?
You read the point NVIDIA yesterday, right? The numbers were very, very strong, and still the stock went down. I think it's important to highlight that it's a matter of expectations. Expectations are very, very high in the tech space, and so we feel a little bit uncomfortable right now, even if in the long term this is still the place to be.
We've already spoken about stocks, but now it's time to speak about bonds. Everyone said last year, more or less in these times, in November, December, that 2023 was going to be the year of bonds, but it hasn't been. Is 2024 going to be the year of bonds? Because at least now we're already seeing bond yields going down and prices going up.
Well, this year, the big surprise being the resilience of the U.S. economy, right? So nominal growth has been much, much stronger. This has obviously put bond yields a little bit on the upside. For next year, it's very different. Inflation is falling, growth is falling, interest rates have peaked. It's not going to be fantastic because inflation is still high, but I think it's a very solid environment for bonds, considering that the coupon is between 3 and 4%. That makes a huge difference relative to where we were a year ago.
Are you considering, for example, investing in long duration bonds with the idea that bond yields are still going to go down next year?
Yes, long duration bonds, especially in the US, where we feel a clear path, we see a real path for nominal growth to decelerate. We also like high-quality investment-grade bonds and emerging market bonds as well.
Luca Paolini, estratega, jefe de Pictet Asset Management. It's been a pleasure to have you here in Negocios Televisión, here in our studios. Thank you so much. Nos decía Luca, entre otras cosas, que es momento ahora mismo de mirar a bonos de larga duración, por ejemplo, en Estados Unidos, que es verdad que el año que viene es posible que empecemos a ver también cómo es el año, empieza a ser el año de los bonos, sabiendo que 2023 no lo ha sido. Nos explicaba, por ejemplo, la situación económica de Estados Unidos. Nos decía que ha sido muy resiliente, sobre todo porque el consumidor lo está haciendo. Allí el empleo de momento se mantiene estable, con unas tasas de desempleo que están históricamente bajas. También nos hablaba, por ejemplo, de Europa, nos decía que probablemente ya estemos en una recesión y que el año que viene y el siguiente veamos un crecimiento más fuerte que el de Estados Unidos, donde probablemente veremos desaceleración respecto a sectores. Por ejemplo, nos hablaba de algunos sectores como el sector farmacéutico aquí en Europa y nos decía, cuidado, prudencia con el sector tecnológico de cara al año que viene. Nosotros lo dejamos aquí, pero enseguida en unos minutos volvemos con Ponderación a las 12:30 con Eva Villanueva.